Hello, Bridget. Thank you so much for agreeing to sit down to talk to the readers of LabourList. The first question I want to ask you, obviously the thing that we're all talking about at the moment is the deputy leadership of the Labour Party. This is a job without a job description. So how do you see the role working?
So I'd see it as my job as deputy to unite the party, to make us proud, to make members proud of the brilliant things that we are doing in government. We need to beat reform, we've got to take the fight to them, but also to be that campaigning voice around the cabinet table. And I do think it matters having that seat at the table and having that voice, because I would use that as a mandate to do more. You know, I'm really proud of the things that I've delivered on in government over the last year or so. I think things that do make members really feel proud and wouldn't be happening were it not for a Labour government, whether that's expanding free school meals, the big expansion of childcare, and building on that amazing Labour legacy of Sure Start to deliver Best Start family hubs across the country. So I think I've got a strong track record of delivery. But I think if you look at those who've held the role before, you know, most recently Angela, who did an amazing job, she was particularly powerful because not only was she our brilliant deputy, but she was running a really important government department alongside that. And, you know, I did lots of work with her, particularly around supporting really vulnerable children going through the care system.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are tensions, aren't there, between cabinet collective responsibility and possibly being that more campaigning voice. I know that a lot of the emails and messages we get from our members is they want someone who can, you know, stand up to power, be a voice of the membership. How would you manage that tension?
I mean, I'm someone who right throughout my life has had to stand up and fight to get to where I am today and to deliver for this generation of children. And I've had to fight tooth and nail for a lot of that. You know, the measures that I've just set out that I've been delivering on, they didn't happen by accident. I had to fight for them, but I delivered them because they mattered to me and they matter to children and they matter to the future of our country. So I think with that seat at the cabinet table, with a mandate from members, I can absolutely deliver more of those things that Labour members do want to see, because everybody worked so incredibly hard to get that Labour government elected. We've done some great things. We haven't got everything right. I'd be absolutely the first to acknowledge that. And, you know, to be clear, I've had a fair bit of nonsense along the way myself and lots of things written and said about the approach that I'm taking and have taken. I think that shows I'm a pretty independent-minded and forceful person, and that's what members should expect from me if they vote for me as their deputy.
In terms of, you're obviously clearly incredibly passionate about education. There are a range of issues that Labour members will be asking you to comment on over the next few weeks as you campaign for their votes for deputy leader. How do you manage, stepping on other cabinet members' toes? Obviously, that's slightly easier for Lucy Powell, being that she's outside of the government now.
Look, I think it's important for all of us, whether we're inside a cabinet or out, to be able to have honest and frank conversation about the policies that we do want to pursue in the future. Sometimes they're frankly best done behind closed doors. And that applies, in the conversations that, I've often had with our trade unions, with our members and others. Sometimes it's just more effective if you have that fight, you have that row and you make the case behind closed doors. But I think there is also a really important campaigning element to this role as well. And it's why in the run up to the general election, I was the length and breadth of the country campaigning with countless parliamentary candidates, now many of them fantastic MPs. And I'll be right there in Wales, in Scotland, across our country, across England, alongside that with the local elections we've got coming up in May. And that's why right from the off, when I decided to stand and to go for this, I've been across the country, just come back from Scotland yesterday. And by the middle of the week, I will have visited every nation and region. That's what members can expect from me, a campaigning presence. But critically, I think the things I've delivered in education are things that people want to put on their leaflets because they're tangible, they're real. You can point to the nursery, the breakfast club, the difference that's making. That's the sense of politics and the hope and optimism that I think we need to inject a bit more into what we're doing.
I mean, I agree with you, but I think that there has been sometimes not that tone always set from the top. We do need, excuse me, that sense of optimism, that sense of a Labour government making a difference. And you've nodded to the fact that we've made some mistakes. What has surprised you about being in government?
Being in government is hard. You've got to make tough choices. You can't please everyone all the time and you have to balance competing pressures. I think party members would know that unlike 97, we not only, we've got an economy that was left in a terrible state by the Tories and crumbling public services. And that's a really big challenge. But we are doing some really good progressive Labour things that will make a difference. It is tough, but I spent 14 years in opposition, talking in Parliament, on the media, everywhere about the things that I wanted to do that would make a difference to the life chances of children in our country. And for 14 years, I saw the lives of the people that I represent get worse and worse and worse, and those opportunities pulled away. And I do genuinely believe that, every day in government, even the worst, is better than the best day in opposition, because you actually get to make a difference to people's lives. I mean, that's why I joined the Labour Party, because I believe really strongly in those values that we hold dear about equality, about social justice, about background not determining what you go on to achieve in life. And that's why the Labour Party has been the most important vehicle for social change this country has ever seen.
And you've talked about your own background. Obviously, you have an incredibly rich and very, very Labour social mobility story. You're not the only person from that background. So what was it? What sparked you into, no, actually what I want to do is be a Labour MP?
So it's what kind of motivated me to get involved in the first place is the reason I stood for Parliament to represent my home community in Westminster. I grew up in a Labour family. My mum brought me up on her own. She was a party member and activist. And if she could only go to meetings if I went along with her. So I spent quite a lot of my young years kind of playing under the tables in the miners' hall.
Sounds very familiar.
And running around outside. But as I got older, I got more interested, got more involved. And the reason for that was I saw what was going on in my community, a time in the 80s and the 90s when, youth unemployment was really high, crime was high. And for all, we didn't always have a lot of money. I had a family that was rich in love and was really supportive. But I saw lots of the other children that I grew up with having a far harder time of it. And I felt a fundamental sense that was wrong, because they were talented, brilliant people. And my community was one where there was a closeness in many ways. We looked out for one another. And it made me really angry that I felt we were being left behind by the Conservatives and that we weren't being given every opportunity and every chance in life. And I wanted to be a part of turning that around. And I joined the Labour Party when I was 15 in 1998, at a point when, brilliant reforming Labour education secretaries like David Blunkett, who I'm really, pleased to have his support. But the backing from people like him wasn't the backing in this contest, although I'm delighted that David is backing me. It was the backing for children like me from my kind of community. And that's what I'm delivering right now, and where I know we need to go further as a party to really break that link between background and success, so that where you're from doesn't determine what you can go on to achieve. It's about your talent, your hard work. But for many kids, it comes down to luck.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think luck is an underrated quality in politics, unfortunately. Too much of our life chances are set by luck, and a lot of what Labour does is try to pull away from that. I think Keir Starmer was described in the run-up to the election as a lucky general, possibly lucky in his opponents in particular. But it hasn't always felt that lucky over the last few years. So I asked you what has surprised you in government, but I think, what advice would you like to get from those? I mean, you've talked about your relationship with David Blunkett. People who've done it before, like, what's the personal advice? How do you get through the day-to-day grind of when it's not always feeling as lucky?
I mean, politics can have incredible ups and downs when every aspect of life has those big ups and downs. I suppose I had the opportunity to be in the role of Shadow Education Secretary for 2.5 years in opposition, which allowed me to very clearly think about what I wanted to do, how we would achieve it, and then get on and do that from day one. So just to give one example, at the start of the month, I was at a school in the Northwest with Michael Wheeler, one of our MPs, and his constituency, seeing the school-based nursery that was just opening its doors that week to 20 plus children in a part of a primary school that hadn't previously been used. To go from a commitment that we made with trade unions through the National Policy Forum process that went into our manifesto, to then deliver on that in a little over a year, I think does demonstrate what you can do when you have the right policy, the right idea, but you put your mind to it and you make it happen. And I know what our members want to see, and crucially what our voters also want to see, is they want to see change in their communities. They want to see tangible, more money in their pocket, better opportunities and life chances for their children. And they want to see the real difference that it makes, more police on the streets, all of those areas where we are going to get there and we will make change happen. The pace can be frustrating, and I can be as frustrated as anybody about how slow it can be. But actually in some areas, to start rolling out breakfast clubs, within a little over 6 months of a Labour government, that first wave of nurseries, pressing on and introducing VAT on private schools fees to invest in state education. We've really cracked on and done quite a lot. There's more to do, and there are always challenges. But if we don't celebrate our successes, if we don't shout from the rooftops, nobody else is going to do that. And what I've just said there in terms of the change we've made, that wouldn't be happening if there were a Conservative or a Reform government. And that's why I do see my role as being one to challenge, to get those, to make sure that voices are heard, that we are taking action. But we've got to get out there and take the fight to our opponents. We can't sit back and expect people just to see and feel what we're doing unless we're, going to be proud to celebrate some of that. So
we've got elections coming up in Scotland and Wales and local government in May. I think there's sometimes an SW1 consensus that the next election is 4 years away, and anyone from a council seat or an assembly member would tell you that's not true. So what would your role be as deputy leader in the run up to those elections?
I think I've already set the tone in launching the campaign about the kind of campaigning deputy that I would be. Been to Wales, been to many of our regions already, just come back from Scotland. And I've got local elections in my patch as well next May too. So we do need that visibility. I'd be out there with members on the doors, making that change happen. But I do think we also need to just reflect on how we take that fight to our opponents. So yes, being proud of what we've achieved, but we're not going to beat reform by aping reform. And I think we've got to make sure that everything we do is consistent with our values, Labour values, around solidarity, around fairness, and around a sense of equality too.
You're obviously travelling the country. I've heard you say before that you always have a book in your handbag. What are you reading right now?
I do have a book in my handbag. Actually, I just started it on the way back from Scotland. It's been sat on my shelf for years and I've never read it, Atonement.
Oh, well, it's very good.
Okay. So.
I haven't read a lot of Ian McKeown, but I've very much enjoyed that one. And do you is reading your kind of, do you like to read fiction to get away from the politics of the world?
I like reading a mixture of fiction and non-fiction. I like autobiographies, history, all of that too. Listening to music, going to gigs.
Who's the last gig you saw?
Franz Ferdinand in Sunderland.
Oh, great.
Just before they played at Glastonbury. Not that I went to Glastonbury, but it was a warm-up for them for Glastonbury, and it was amazing. And we've got a really vibrant music scene in Sunderland now, and new venues, and it's really amazing.
I've been to a gig in Sunderland.
So this was at the fire station.
Not quite as big as Franz Ferdinand.
So this was at the fire station, which is where I also launched my campaign to be deputy leader. So it's a brilliant venue. But the other thing I do is I also like to play hockey in my spare time, and the hockey season has just started, and I did manage to play on Saturday before I went on my travels.
And did you score?
No, we did win, but I got an assist, but we did win. So
it's all better than I could do, let's face it. I mean, you're quite competitive, aren't you? When you talk about sports, I've listened to you on other things. You want to win, and clearly you're in this deputy leadership contest to win. How do you manage that within, what is essentially a family, the Labour family? So we all have to come back in together once the competition's over. How do you manage that process?
I am a competitive person, although hockey, of course, is a team game, so I'm competitive on behalf of our team in the same way that I'm competitive on behalf of our party. But actually, what I came into politics to do was to improve the life chances of children in communities like mine and deliver for working people. And I think we can have our disagreements, we can air that, but we've got to focus on who we are and what we're about. That's always been the approach I've taken. And I think, politics, I have spoken about where I'm from in order to, I think, demonstrate why that matters to me and why politics matters to me. But it isn't about me, and it's never been about me. For me, it's about our party, our movement, and what we achieve together.
It's such an interesting conundrum, isn't it? Because you're quite right. We're a collectivist party. We're about the people that we serve, the people that we represent. But we are also human beings who look for leaders, and you're running to be one of those figures. And how do you manage that? Because I've also heard you say that you're quite shy. You went to drama club as a kid in order to develop out of some of that. So how do you manage that tension?
I suppose, like lots of kids from my kind of background, you have to develop a sense of toughness and resilience, and you have to come out of your shell, and you have to really fight for what you believe in and fight to achieve for others. And for me, the reason I'm standing for this role is because I think I'm the right person to fight for our party, to fight for our country, and to fight for the causes that brought me into the Labour Party, that brought everyone else into the party, which is, and it is genuinely wonderful when you travel the length and breadth of the country, meet with members and hear about what they're involved in their communities, not just the big work of government, but also, the support that people put in terms of food banks, which, shouldn't exist. We shouldn't need food banks, but, the amazing volunteers who give up their time, some of the faith groups that will do a lot around, loneliness amongst perhaps some of our older residents. There's an amazing sense of community. And I think sometimes the small vocal minority, on social media who are seeking to divide our country, I think is fundamentally anti-British in terms of our sense of community and identity. And I think we as a party need to be really proud of who we are as a nation, claim that flag. It's our flag. This is our identity as much as it is anybody else's, and not use an approach to cause division and disunity at a time when we do face, globally, some big challenges, and where we've seen, including last year, some big challenges around community cohesion. And that's what we've got to get right.
Obviously, you have an interesting sort of set of predecessors. We've already discussed Angela Rayner. But each one of those brought something different to the role, approached it in a different way. So who would you say, Angela excluded, was your favourite Labour deputy leader of the past?
There's an array of brilliant people to choose from, so I don't mean to cause offence to any of those I don't identify. I mean, obviously John Prescott did an amazing job. I do have to say that Margaret Beckett was an inspiration for so many of us, as was Harriet Harman, particularly for bringing women into politics. And I think you look at the work that some of those trailblazers who paved the way for women like me to get involved in politics, but not just that, but were also so supportive and encouraging of getting more women into politics. They did that because it was the right thing to do, because we should be a party, a movement, a parliament that represents our country in all its diversity. But actually, it was more than that. It meant that for the first time, when we had big numbers of Labour MPs, we were talking about domestic violence. We were talking about childcare as being an important area for government to take action. We were talking about equal pay. That happened because we had women like Harriet fighting for that change. And I'd want to build on that legacy of, so many of the amazing people that have gone before, but to give voice to some of those issues that don't always get the attention they deserve.
Bridget Phillipson, thank you so much.
Thank you.